Apex 2.0 has been a rumour for a while now, but weirdly enough, thank you to Battlefield 6 and also a bit more information from EA, we've learned a bit more about Apex 2.0. So is it real? When is it coming out? What is it going to be? Let's just talk about everything. And weirdly enough, most of the information about Apex 2.0 is from the horse's mouth. It's from EA earnings calls. And even weirder is the fact that the first mention of Apex 2.0 from EA was them saying it would never happen. Back in October 2024, in an EA earnings call, EA said due to Apex's relatively bad state at the time, they had to drive significant growth and re-engagement, and they needed large systematic changes to do this, and they would continue to focus on retention in the future of the game. After EA said that, somebody asked a question saying, would a systematic change be something that requires a whole rebuild of the game, akin to an Apex 2.0 rather than incremental changes? And the EA CEO replied saying, that's a really good question, and probably beyond the scope of this conversation, but what I would say is typically what we've seen, again in the context of live service games, is that the version 2 thing is rarely as successful as the version 1 thing. So because of the fact that the EA CEO literally said this, we thought Apex 2.0 was off the table. We wouldn't have something like Overwatch 2, Siege X, or Hunt 1896. We wouldn't have kind of like a sequel to a live service game. But then it got weird because in the next earnings call in February of 2025, the EA CEO kind of contradicted this by saying, as we think about Apex today, I really think about development happening across 3 core vectors. The first is how we continue to support this incredible community that plays the game day in and day out. The second phase will be doing a more meaningful update of Apex as a broad game experience. And the EA CEO even said the team is diligently working on this phase. He said, for this update, you should imagine we probably wouldn't want to drop that on top of a Battlefield launch. And so from a timing standpoint, our thinking right now is that this should exist post Battlefield. The CEO goes on to say, and then on a longer term horizon, again, these franchises that exist at this level and have this much fan love don't come that often. What I think we've demonstrated as a company is an ability to build franchises that last 10, 20, 30 years and growing. Our expectation is that Apex will be one of those franchises, and that sometime on a longer term horizon, there will be an even bigger, more meaningful update to the broader game experience, and Apex 2.0 if you will. This will not be the final incarnation of Apex. So the EA CEO made it clear that he wants to do a big update to Apex's broader game experience, potentially being or on the level of an Apex 2.0. So when we heard about this, most of the stuff regarding a hypothetical Apex 2.0 was kind of up in the air in terms of when this would release, and also in terms of what Apex 2.0 or a meaningful update to Apex's broader game experience would even be. And this is where Battlefield 6 comes in, because don't forget, the EA CEO said, we do believe there should be a major update that will probably happen after the Battlefield 6 launch. And at the time, we knew literally no information about Battlefield 6, but now we've had all the trailers, we've had the beta, most of us have probably pre-ordered it even though we shouldn't, and more importantly, we know when Battlefield 6 is coming out, so we kind of have a clear idea when Apex could receive this meaningful update. Back when we heard all this information, I did theorize that Battlefield 6 would release in like March of 2026, but no, it turns out it's releasing in October of 2025, aka in a few months. And first of all, Battlefield 6 is going to be peak. I really enjoyed the beta, but second of all, this puts Apex's big update to release kind of any time after October. Now realistically, EA wouldn't want to release this big Apex update within a month of the Battlefield 6 release, and I don't think they would release it in the back end of 2025. Instead, I think at the very earliest, Apex could release this big update that they keep referencing on Apex's 7th anniversary in February of 2026. Now, we always get an Apex season release around its anniversary. Think back to like season 16, that was an Apex anniversary season and we got tons of content. And also season 16, an Apex anniversary season, is when Apex hit its highest player count ever on Steam. So I don't think it would be crazy to say a potential release date for this big Apex update would literally just be on Apex's 7th anniversary when Respawn knows there's a potential for a high player count. And if it doesn't release released then, my second guess for an update to Apex's broader game experience would maybe be in like Season 30, which would be later in 2026. Providing this big update that was referenced is still gonna happen, because since it was last mentioned, we've had 2 earning calls from EA, and in neither of these has this update been referenced again. In the earnings call of May of 2025, EA said that Apex was gonna underperform. They said, while Apex's traction is in line with our expectations for the past 2 quarters, our 2026 guidance assumes an approximately 40% year-over-year decline in net bookings. And then in the most recent earnings call on the very back end of July of this year, less than a month ago, they said Apex performed well, and on a whole, their live service net bookings were 1 billion, down 1%, excluding Apex, whose performance was 2 points better than they had expected. But still, no mention of the update. Now, it's not particularly surprising they didn't mention this update again, because EA earnings calls are meant to encapsulate the whole business on a whole, and they don't really talk about individual updates in games. They kind of just talk about how much their games are earning and if the games are performing well. So it's not surprising that Apex 2.0 wasn't mentioned again, but I do think a few people are getting antsy that this update hasn't been mentioned for pretty much half a year now. Still, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, and maybe the reason a lot of the seasonal updates have been relatively small with a massive lack of map updates. Seriously, the last proper map update we got was back in May of 2024 with the Broken Moon update, is because Respawn are preparing something bigger. What is this update going to be then, by the way? Well, there were a lot of people theorizing that Apex will be moved onto a new engine, which I personally don't believe, because it's way harder than it sounds. Moving Apex from the Source engine to Unreal would be a really hard task, and developers have said before this just isn't going to happen. If there are going to be engine changes, I assume there will be engine upgrades. But after observing many EA games and listening to all of their earning calls for years on end, I think this major update EA are talking about after the Battlefield launch is just going to be more community generated content on Apex. Recently, over the last few years, EA have been obsessed with community generated content, and for good reason, because why develop your game when you can get people to develop it for you? This is why games like Roblox, where people make their own games, are really popular and really profitable, because Roblox don't have to actually develop experiences within Roblox, but just the base for experiences. Same with Fortnite. Fortnite's moving into community generated content more and more, and guess what? Battlefield 6 is also going to be big on the player generated content, literally allowing players to make their maps from the ground up. In the Battlefield 6 trailers, it was demonstrated that players with enough creativity can probably create anything they want to. So it's clear that not only are EA really interested in community generated content because it's a way to add just way more content to the game with zero effort from them, but also they can implement ways for players to make their own content in the game. And honestly, if I could bet on a change that Apex would receive in the next 5 years, it would be a way for players to make their own community content and host it in the game, like community maps, game modes, or even legends. So could this be the big update EA are talking about? Well, realistically, we don't know, but I do believe community generated content is the future of Apex. And despite not hearing too much about Apex 2.0 recently, we have heard a bit more about Apex's future from EA's president, who said that EA are pretty motivated to do a film or TV show about Apex in a way that really respects and upholds the brand and the franchise. It's definitely clear recently that EA have realized that Apex is really important, and maybe they were taking it for granted. And I do believe EA are putting more effort into Apex and also the Apex brand on a whole. I would love to see like an Edge Runners level show for Apex. I would absolutely love to. But I honestly think the future for Apex is looking bright. Clearly, systematic changes have happened at Respawn. They communicate a lot more, they listen to the fans a lot more, they update the game a lot more, and Respawn just feels like they genuinely care. I'm really happy with how Apex is going, and I'm excited to see how the future pans out. So to keep updated with that, subscribe.